So in the fight in the pro-democracy space and to defend the rule of law, it is taking Democratic attorneys general to be able to bring it to the Trump administration. And at a time when a lot of people are losing hope that the rule of law won't stand, we know that the Democratic attorneys general, led by people like California AG Rob Bonta, are making sure that the fight is done. So I want to say thank you and welcome to AG Bonta now. So let's deal with the breaking news, sir, because it just came out. You are leading a coalition to be able to sue the administration over an unlawful final rule that deals with the Health and Human Services and the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services vis-a-vis ACA. I just said a lot. Let's start with this first question, sir, which is, what's a final rule and why should people care about final rules?
Sure. Well, thank you. We are absolutely committed as the California Attorney General, other Democratic attorneys general throughout the nation, to uphold the rule of law, fight for and defend the Constitution, and make sure that the president doesn't break the law or violate the Constitution. Don't think it's a lot to ask that the president of the United States of America do lawful things and not do unlawful or unconstitutional things. So we've been busy. If this president were judged based on how many times he has broken the law and violated the Constitution, he would be the most successful president in the history of the United States. He is breaking the law at an incredible pace, more than once a week. And we've brought 33 lawsuits in 25 weeks, not because we want to. We wish we didn't have to sue him any times because he'd be complying with the law and the Constitution. But this week we sued him 3 times. Today we sued him based on a final rule regarding the Affordable Care Act. A final rule is a rule that implements a congressional law, a statute. Here, the law was the Affordable Care Act, probably the most consequential, transformational health care law in the history of the United States that brought access to high quality, affordable health care to millions more Americans than ever before. It had great provisions like you couldn't be prohibited because of a pre-existing condition from getting health care. So very popular, very appropriate, and very good for the health of Americans. Unfortunately, the final rule that the Trump administration passed would strip health care coverage away from 2 million Americans. And there's a process you have to follow where you have to do things that are not arbitrary and capricious, that are reasoned and reasonable and supported by the facts and evidence. And unfortunately, it's become a theme for this administration. They have taken steps here that have no support, that ignore the facts, that are not reasonable, and that are arbitrary and capricious. So we brought them to court today because they have unlawfully attempted to strip away healthcare coverage from 2 million Americans.
Yeah, so California has one of the largest number of ACA plan enrollees at about 2 million. And then this final rule, and I wanted to make sure that our viewers understood the impact of this, it would cause an increase in people to be able to lose their insurance, about 1.8 million. It would increase health insurance premiums, out-of-pocket copays and deductibles, and also would exclude gender-affirming care. But let's be clear, you're the California AG, but this is an attack by the Trump administration, not only on the people in California, but across the United States.
That's right. That's right. It is. And as are many of the federal actions that are taken, they impact people all throughout the nation. Of course, California, the largest state in the nation, the biggest population, 39 million people strong, 11% of the national population. We have a lot at risk in any of these cases. But what we're doing is really what every attorney general should be doing, standing up for the rule of law, defending the rights and freedoms of the people in our state. But I do want to point out that in every case, it has only been Democratic attorneys general. Not once has any Republican attorney general had the courage or conviction to stand up for their own constituents, to make sure that their rights and their freedoms aren't trampled on, that the funding for their state isn't unlawfully taken away, that their people aren't hurt because of illegal conduct from the federal administration. So the Republican AGs are craven and cowardly and feckless and not doing what their constituents should expect from them. And they're going to have to answer to their constituents, and hopefully they'll be held accountable in the next election. But we're doing what is completely appropriate, standing up for the rule of law, defending our people, and here defending access to health care that's been unlawfully stripped away.
Another big lawsuit that you brought this week involves the 6 programs that are educationally based that have been frozen. For California alone, the amount of money at issue exceeds $939 million. Once again, AG Bonta, you are leading a coalition of at least 23 Democratic attorneys general to be able to sue the administration. And here I want to underscore what's at stake. Educational programs for migrant children and English learners. This money went to improve school conditions, tech in classrooms, community learning centers, adult education. Fundamentally, the budgets have already been planned out for the upcoming school year. My daughter's about to start school in the state of Florida in just weeks. How much is this impacting not only the people in California specifically who've been relying upon this in terms of their kids and even adult learning, but frankly, a lot of people across the United States that might be impacted by this funding freeze?
Unfortunately, this is par for the course from this administration when it comes to undermining public education, attacking children, and trying to steal away their futures, hurting parents who want good education for their kids, harming teachers as well. The money that's at stake here, about $7 billion nationwide, almost $1 billion in California alone, was supposed to come in two installments. The first installment on July 1st, which has passed, and the second on October 1st. And so we've brought a request for a restraining order to restrain or stop the Trump administration from withholding this money and to enforce, require it to flow. But this is about our children, and I believe that society should be judged on how we treat our most vulnerable, and including our sick, our poor, our seniors, and of course our children. And this is a presidential administration that has tried to completely dismantle the Department of Education, critical programs that protect civil rights and special education and learning for poor students. And here, as you just mentioned, this is about learning math, learning how to read, learning to speak English, making sure that those who have parents in migratory professions where they move from school to school or school district to school district have consistency, have quality, have support, have services. And this federal government is unlawfully stripping all that away, or at least attempting to do so, which is why we've stepped in to help make sure that money continues to support the individuals that are being contemplated by Congress who appropriated this funding.
And I'm detecting a common denominator theme here, Attorney General, when it comes to specifically the state of California. I'm not a fool to say that it seems to be a targeting moment. I understand that there's other states that are implicated by the Trump administration's moves, but I feel like California is unfairly being targeted. And I'm going to bring up yet another lawsuit that you have spearheaded, and specifically dealing with California, as it is the largest beneficiary of FEMA's BRIC program, Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities program. And for those of you that are tuning in and listening to this, California has always relied upon, and smartly so, disaster preparedness versus just being reactionary when natural disasters happen. Unfortunately, California is one of the most beautiful states in our amazing country, but you guys really are prone to some natural disasters and on a big scale. Congress already invested $1 billion plus in 2021 in the Infrastructure Act for California to have this money. And now FEMA has unilaterally and arbitrarily just taken away this money from this BRIC program. Talk about why it was so important to bring this lawsuit to be able to have, again, disaster preparedness. This is not money that you're asking for after the fact.
That's right. This BRIC program has its origin story in the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina. And it's been bipartisan in its the support for a program that does invests in the common sense approach to prevention, pre-disaster mitigation efforts, to have readiness. It makes common sense. It should be funded. We're obviously in a world of climate change and extreme weather events, and California, to your point, has not been immune to it at all. Facing wildfires, we've seen superstorms around the country. We saw a horrific, very tragic flood as a dad, hard to even say it, at a summer campsite in Texas. And my heart goes out to the families and communities and everyone touched and hurt by that disaster. And there is a way to be more prepared, to save lives, to reduce injury, to protect property. And that's what the BRIC program was designed for. And you can see, based on its common sense and practical approach, why it was bipartisan. And for the Trump administration now to unlawfully withhold this funding is not just unlawful. It puts lives in danger, and in that regard is immoral. And there was funding coming to projects in California that would stop mudslides in certain areas, including in Southern California, as well as flooding in Sacramento, seismic retrofitting in the Central Valley. So a whole variety of different projects that should be funding should be funded and that the Trump administration has unlawfully withheld funding from. So that's why we brought the lawsuit. You can see from this policy that it's common sense, saves lives, and should be restored.
Your lawsuit also highlights something that is a theme of the Trump administration, which is incompetence. Neither Cameron Hamilton, who was the FEMA administrator who slashed this money, nor his successor, which is this guy David Richardson, who we saw roll into Texas, and this is my words, not yours, looking like he was coming off a bender days after these Texas floods that happened. He comes rolling in, and I mean, neither of these guys are not only qualified to hold these positions, but they are doing stuff that in capacities for which they were not appointed. And I thought that was a really interesting angle to this lawsuit, because there's all this stuff that's happening, but it's the people that are controlling the levers of power that we should be focusing upon. And if you have people that are competent and thoughtful in these roles, then they're not going to be doing stuff like this. But then we see these cronies and the people that get these, cush appointments simply because they're just kowtowing to Donald Trump.
Yeah, the president has not filled the cabinet and key federal government positions with our best in America. Unfortunately, it hasn't been based on talent or experience or competence or ability. It's been, unfortunately, seemingly based just on blind loyalty. Will you do whatever the Trump wants you to do, even if it's not the thing that the American people deserve or not the thing that your job is supposed to do? So, and the case here that we've made is that the leaders of these positions should be appointed. They should be nominated by the president, confirmed by the Senate, and they have not been, and that's unlawful. And a confirmation hearing would have been a good thing here to explore and scrutinize experience, ability, perspective, vision, and maybe they wouldn't have got confirmed for all the reasons you've just stated.
Well, I mean, I think the trend was set through all of those cabinet appointments, starting with, sadly, Kristi Noem, who's running up our DHS, which includes FEMA, by the way. A lot of people are like, huh? Yeah, that happens to be within her purview. And just in the news a couple of days ago, we saw, maybe it was even tomorrow, candidly, all the days run together these days, but we saw that there's now been a pulling out of at least 2,000 troops from LA. And California, once again with you, leading the charge about suing the administration for sending in the National Guard and other military troops into LA specifically. And now we see 2,000 of them sent out, even though they did nothing when they were there, right? I mean, other than an intimidation, show of force, they didn't really have a full purpose for being there. I saw, obviously, we've been following the litigation, especially here at the Katie Phang News Channel, but I, as a lawyer, always want to see what's going on. There was this great order from the federal judge who initially gave y'all what you needed and what you wanted. And then you got an appellate court stay that happened, but neither here nor there. But on June 24th, you got an order allowing for expedited discovery in that lawsuit, which I thought was fantastic. Talk about and let our viewers know kind of what's the status of that litigation, because all of us are watching that very carefully. I've talked about post comitatus a lot here on this channel and the Insurrection Act. And so I'm very proud to say that the viewers that are listening to this conversation right now will know exactly what those concepts are. But I am very much interested in a little bit of a deeper dive on this expedited discovery, because we also know here that discovery can open up a lot of interesting kind of Pandora's boxes, I think, for an administration like Trump's.
Right. The sending home of the 2,000 troops this week is proof positive and confirmation that they were never needed. It was never necessary that they be here. If there is what Stephen Miller and Trump argue, a insurrection or a rebellion or inability to enforce the federal laws, then why are they going home? Because there's not any of those things, and they know that, and we've known that since day one. And so it's been disappointing and sad, frankly, to see that these patriots who've signed up to serve their country have been so disrespected, treated as political pawns, deployed to a place where even they, reporting has shown, are wondering why they're there. When they first got there, they didn't have adequate food or sleeping arrangements. They've just stood on federal buildings doing nothing because there was nothing to do, because everything was under control. By the time they arrived on that Sunday, the sheriff's department, the police department, the largest sheriff's department in the nation, by the way, one of the largest police departments in the nation, and their mutual aid allies and law enforcement had everything under control. It was mostly peaceful protest with some agitation. Yes, but that is not anything that we hadn't seen before. We've seen much worse in this nation.
Certainly wasn't an insurrection, but go on, I'm sorry.
Not an insurrection at all by any stretch. Yeah. But you listen to the words of Miller and others, they're always using those words because why? Because they desperately want and desire and covet what if that was those those factual circumstances were actually true, they would have, which is additional executive power. They just want the power and will just gaslight you and tell you that there's an insurrection or a rebellion when there's clearly not, so they can have the power. That's what they want. But the case that we brought, and we got a temporary restraining order within days, was only about the first week of the deployment. But the discovery that we're doing now through the expedited discovery order of the district court judge in the Northern District of California allows us to look at all of the actions since that time on the issue of posse comitatus, which is obviously whether the U.S. military on American soil is engaged in civilian law enforcement arrests and detentions, searches and seizures, which they are prohibited from engaging in. And so we're engaged in depositions, written discovery to get to the bottom of what the Marines are there for. What are they doing? What those 4,000 and now 2,000 National Guards people are doing, what they're engaged in, and is it lawful? So we're going to present what we find in our preliminary injunction hearing, and as we seek a preliminary injunction on the posse comitatus issue. What the court had earlier decided on was just a statutory issue about the National Guard and whether there was a rebellion or an insurrection, or the laws of the federal government were unable to be implemented and executed. And so the posse comitatus issue is separate, and that's what we're doing a discovery on.
Yeah, I've said to my viewers and my followers and others that the fact that we talk about posse comitatus in this review is kind of nuts to me in the 21st century. I don't think I ever we didn't spend a lot of time on that in law school at all, right? I mean, you included, right? And Insurrection Act, again, these concepts, the fact that they're being kind of bandied about and deployed in our discourse signifies exactly, to your point, it's all about the power. It's all about the unitary power of the executive, this idea of making Trump the king, right, about what happens. And 100%. and part of that involves dutiful and loyal subjects, one of whom is the Texas Attorney General, Ken Paxton. And I bring him up as an example of how not to be a good AG. So Ken Paxton has gone on, I'll call it Twitter. It's never going to be X to me. He's gone on Twitter and he has threatened to hunt down and arrest Texas legislators if they go to California in what's called a quorum break. And I spoke to congressional candidate Isaiah Martin. He's running for Congress in Texas. And I spoke to him yesterday and we talked about the partisan gerrymandering that Greg Abbott is trying to do right now in a special legislative session that begins July 21st. Just wanted to kind of get just some quick thoughts from you about the idea of because I know California has independent commissions when it comes to the redistricting and the redrawing of the maps, but your thoughts as the California AG on the possibility, frankly, of California maybe tackling this gerrymandering issue by doing some redistricting of its own.
I think it's on the table, and I think it's something that the governor certainly has talked about, and the legislature may be engaged in along with the governor. We have a proposition a number of years ago that led to exactly what you said, an independent redistricting commission, where individuals are apolitical and they district based on communities of interest, not the gerrymandering that you see that's been harmful and diluted voting power of certain communities and hurt those communities' ability to vote for someone who will represent them. If every state did that, it would be a good thing. But because California is, in my perspective, advanced on this issue, principled on this issue, we're doing it, but others are not. We're at a political disadvantage. If Texas is willing to, blatantly and brazenly redistrict to get 5 more congressional seats, and in the process win hold Congress in an election where clearly it should be reclaimed by the Democrats and should change hands in terms of power, and Democrats win Congress, then we need to rethink how we're operating here. We can't be naive to the fact that we would just get beaten, and that would have consequences in terms of who leads Congress and the decisions that they make. There could be more. I hate to say it, but just by reference, more big, beautiful bills in the future, which are so cruel, so damaging, so harmful, strip away healthcare from our most vulnerable, hurt people in so many different ways. And so it's the old adage, you got to fight fire with fire. You can't be naive and just let yourself be beat and just tell yourself you're doing the right thing. If all the states did the right thing, that'd be great. But we have one hand tied behind our back in doing the right thing here, and we have to be practical as well. So we'll see what the governor and the legislature and ultimately the people of the state of California do, because if it was passed by proposition, my quick take is it needs to be reversed, if it's going to be reversed at all, or a new approach to be taken, again, by proposition by the people.
And before we part ways, I just kind of wanted to get your quick take then on this, which is in that Texas, and it's again, partisan gerrymandering. It is not redistricting. It is flat. It's not based on a new census. It's not done yet at the beginning of a decade, which is how you normally do it. Because I try to teach people, redistricting is okay. Redistricting is fine. Redistricting is based on facts and this census issue. Partisan gerrymandering is nuts. That is definitely not something that is good to do. But I wanted to get your thoughts on the fact that the genesis of all of this was a letter from Harvey Dillon, who was, handpicked by Donald Trump to run the Civil Rights Division. And civil rights is such a irony now because we don't really have them here in this administration. But she sent this letter threatening to sue the state of Texas if they didn't fix what she thinks is an unconstitutional districting issue of at least 5 congressional districts in Texas. But this also dovetails with what we've seen Attorney General Pam Bondi do and what we've seen the Department of Justice doing lately. It's this, and I say the troubling thing is you get this imprimatur of credibility because it comes from the DOJ. And now we see this active weaponization of one of the most important federal departments or federal agencies that exist. As a fellow lawyer, how troubling is it to see the wholesale noncompliance by attorneys in the DOJ to federal court orders? The fact that you have to race to court to kind of keep up with the illegal, unconstitutional conduct that we're facing as Americans and especially as people in California. I mean, this is a first. We've heard unprecedented use so much, Attorney General Bonta. And yet, as a lawyer, I can tell you, this type of unlawful conduct, I think is unprecedented.
Agree. And I'll first say that, credibility and trust is earned. You don't just get it. And those in the Trump administration, by their behavior, their conduct, their essentially, their black is white and up is down approach. The person in charge of civil rights seems to be very against civil rights. They're losing the trust. They're losing the credibility. So they don't have the same imprimatur that they, I think they hope to have. And these efforts seem to be scripted and by design to get to an outcome. It's all about the outcome, more power, hold Congress, more power for the executive branch, less power for the states, less for the judicial branch. This is a moment that I think that our Constitution is built for, and that the people of the United States of America are built for. And that gives me the most faith and the most hope. The Constitution was built on, a singular premise that we shall have no kings, no tyrants, no monarchs. And to the extent Trump is seeking to be one, the Constitution is built to resist that effort, that endeavor. It spreads and disperses power vertically between the states and the federal government, also horizontally between the 3 branches of government. There's checks and balances, separation of powers. That's by design, so that no one aspect of government, place in government, has too much power, and the people have the first and the last word always. Government of, for, by the people. The bosses of President Trump are not his billionaire buddies or greedy corporations. They are me and you and us, the people watching us, the people that care and are fighting for an ongoing, enduring democracy in the United States of America. And when we speak up and we speak out, we can't be stopped. So right now, courts are super important. As you've mentioned, as lawyers, we're going to court to uphold the rule of law, defend the Constitution. Crowds are important. People coming out, showing out on, whether it be no kings or hands off, and showing how they feel and not accepting the unacceptable or normalizing the abnormal. And courage is so important. To have the courage of our convictions, to have the courage to push back against a bully who wants to intimidate, who wants you to capitulate or acquiesce. We need to stand up for our rights. And when our rights are violated, we got to go to court to make sure they're vindicated and use our voice in our elections to make sure that tomorrow is more fair, more just than today.
I got to tell you, sir, one, and I say this often when we're together, I'm very proud to be a part of the AAPI community with somebody like you. And I also have a lot of state envy because I'm in Florida and I have James O'Hart as my Florida AG. So it would be nice.
California anytime.
I'm like working my way to California in the Pacific Northwest. But anyway, Attorney General Rob Bonta, thank you for giving me and others a restoration of faith that there are good people fighting the good fight. And even though this administration is hell-bent on crushing justice and crushing people that want to do the right thing, you're not taking it lying down and you're punching back. So I appreciate you, sir, in so many ways. And thank you for the privilege of your time and for educating my incredible viewers who are definitely well-versed in the law and they definitely want to know what's going on. So I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for your kind words, Katie. I'm honored to be with you. And to all those who are watching, keep fighting the good fight. I'll fight with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Katie Phang here. We launched the Katie Phang News Channel in partnership with the Midas Touch Network so we could bring you the latest in legal and political news. Straight, no chaser. So if you're a fellow truth teller, hit that subscribe button and share the word about this channel so we can build a high information America together.